Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit more technical analysis on Bitcoin because in today's video, I want to go ahead and explain to you guys exactly what this golden cross that is sitting here on the horizon for Bitcoin is and why it's so significant. You guys have probably seen that I've been talking about this golden cross a lot over the last couple of weeks, and many other YouTubers likewise have as well. It's a very important technical indicator. It's a very important bullish signal for the long term on Bitcoin, but in fact, it's also a signal that gets misrepresented a lot. As you can see, Bitcoin golden crosses don't happen a whole lot between the 50 and the 200 moving average. You actually have to go a long way back into history to find the last Bitcoin golden cross. It was in October of 2015, guys. Many of us weren't even in the space back then. This is the first golden cross that we will have ever seen. They don't happen very often, and in fact, the last time that one happened, a 27-month Bitcoin bull market started that saw Bitcoin rally 100 times from $200 around to $20,000. Massive, massive, very important signal, but it's also, like I said, not one that we see very often, and it's one that gets misconstrued. So in today's video, I want to dive into the nuance of what the 50 crossing the 200 means on the daily chart and talk about what this means for the short term and the long term for Bitcoin. So guys, without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. Bitcoin at the time of recording this video is trading around $5,324. Depending on how far this market runs, depending on how long this video runs, we may do a little bit more short-term TA later on in the video, but I want to focus on the 50 crossing the 200, the golden cross, in today's video. Also, before we really dive into it, I do want to mention that if I sound very hoarse, that's because I've turned into a horse now. Actually, it's just because I'm very sick. I'm not exactly sure what's happened. My throat hurts and it's hard to talk, but we got to get the videos out, guys. The show must go on, so that's why I sound like this. If I sound any different, I'm not exactly sure. Either way, the first thing that we want to discuss here is exactly what a golden cross is. A golden cross is a cross between two moving averages. Most of the time when people talk about golden crosses, they're talking about the 50 moving average, the 50 simple moving average, crossing the 200 simple moving average, and in Bitcoin anyway, they're normally talking about the daily chart. If you were working on the S&P 500, for example, they would probably be talking about the weekly chart, as you do see a lot of golden crosses, for example, here on the S&P 500 during the weekly chart. Of course, Bitcoin isn't really an old enough market for those two moving averages out here on the weekly chart to even be important, even here on the BLX exchange chart. But the point that we're talking about here is that normally the crosses are going to happen on the daily chart or a higher time frame. And these moving averages don't cross very often. As we can see here, if we look back into history, the last time that Bitcoin crossed, these two moving averages crossed, because the cross that we're talking about now hasn't actually happened yet, the last time that we saw a cross is back over here at the end of March of 2018. Right over here, this is called a death cross when the 50 crosses below the 200. This is the 50, this is the 200. When the 50 crosses below the 200, that is called a death cross. When the inverse happens, that's called a golden cross, because normally a death cross signals death for the market, and a golden cross signals what your toilet seat's going to be plated in after one happens. Either way, what we see here is called a death cross, and I remember this very vividly because I was making videos on this back over here in March, and in fact, if you look back on the channel, I was kind of dismissing this death cross for reasons that I'm going to be explaining in today's video as it relates to this golden cross. I was dismissing this because it's not a very good short-term indicator. That's the first nuance, that's the first point that I want to make about golden crosses and death crosses, is that while they are very important, they are also terrible short-term indicators. Let me explain to you exactly why and show it with proof here on the chart. These kind of crosses are terrible short-term indicators. As you guys can see here, this death cross happened after this downtrend was already over. When this death cross happened, Bitcoin traded sideways and then actually rallied something like $3,000 just a couple weeks after the death cross happened. But if you take a step back, you zoom out, then you start to realize that, okay, yes, after this death cross happened, Bitcoin was bearish. A Bitcoin bear market happened. And it didn't happen necessarily because of this death cross, but this death cross was a signal that it was going to continue. This death cross was not a good short-term indicator, but it was a very good long-term indicator. If we keep looking back into history here, what we're also going to see is that a similar thing is true. The last time that we saw a golden cross, yes, Bitcoin was in a rally, but another thing you have to keep in mind is that golden and death crosses are typically lagging indicators because they follow market action, market price action. The price action doesn't necessarily follow the technical indicators. Normally what they are is just a visual way for us to verify what's already happened with the chart and give us signals. That's what a lot of different technical indicators are, but crosses are a very good example of this. And what we see here in 2015 is that Bitcoin was going on a massive rally, and pretty close to the end of it, in fact, we saw the golden cross. So of course, if you bought here when the golden cross happened around October October 25th, something like that, right before Halloween, and then you sold on November the 4th or something, you would have made a good amount of money. But if we go back to the last golden cross right before that, the one that led up to the actual bull market starting, you'll see that this cross happened at the very top. If you bought on this golden cross, you would have very much regretted it. As you can see right here, that's when it happened. If you come over here, grab the cross, we can see right there, terrible time to buy Bitcoin. This is what I'm talking about these crosses being horrible short-term indicators, but they're amazing long-term indicators. They are absolutely phenomenal long-term indicators. Another example of what I'm talking about here would be right here, the last death cross that we saw before the one in 2018. We saw that Bitcoin was trading sideways right here. If you had sold your Bitcoin right here, you would have missed out on the biggest bull market in a very long time for Bitcoin. That would have been a terrible time to sell Bitcoin, guys. You don't want to sell Bitcoin right there. So what you have to keep in mind is that these moving averages crossing are horrible short-term technical indicators. Typically, you can actually trade them contrarianly. That's a new word, contrarianly. You can approach them with a contrarian trading style, and you'll actually do better than if you were to use them in the way that you would think to use them on the surface. That being that if you see a golden cross, buy, and if you see a death cross, sell. That's not a great way to trade these. But the reason that they're so important is because golden and death crosses are long-term technical indicators. This is why I talk about with people all the time. You can be bullish on the long term, bearish on the short term, bullish on the shorter term, and bearish on the shorter term. You can do that. You can be bullish and bearish in 4 different types on 4 different intervals. That's perfectly okay, and that happens all the time. You're not contradicting yourself if you do that, and people think that I'm contradicting myself sometimes when I say, okay, a Bitcoin bull market is going to start in a year. I say 6 months, but let's say a year, and then I say Bitcoin's about to crash in the next 2 days, and they say those two things contradict each other. Those two things don't contradict each other. It's perfectly okay to say that kind of thing. It's okay for me to say Bitcoin is going to fall off a cliff down to $3,000, but a bull market is still coming. It's okay to be contrarian, and it's okay to do that kind of thing. And this is what we're talking about with these golden crosses and death crosses. They are very bad at short-term signals. You don't want to trade them on the short term. They are almost contrarian signals on the short term, actually. But on the longer-term time scales, you want to do as they say, because just about every single time that one happens on the longer term, it means something, and it means something very, very important. The last time we saw a death cross was here close to the beginning of the bear market. I've even seen people argue that the bear market didn't start until this death cross happened. I think I said golden cross a second ago. I've seen people argue this death cross began the Bitcoin bear market. I wouldn't argue that. We were already in a bear market, but it's definitely because the lagging indicator was a good confirmation of a Bitcoin bear market. And that's what I really use these moving average crossings as confirmations of bullish or bearish strength. And as you can see, guys, the last time that we saw 2 golden crosses on Bitcoin right here, we saw one which was kind of just a prelude to the next one. This was the prequel, the squeakquel. This was the prequel over here, and then we saw the actual golden cross over here. When this golden cross happened, it happened at the very beginning of a very long-term bull market that lasted over 2 years. Very big deal. I've talked about the ones in the past before, so I'm not going to get into it, but another way that you can see what I'm talking about is that these over here were bad signals. But when you combine these golden crosses and death crosses with other signals, they are very, very powerful indicators. And what we're seeing here is that Bitcoin is about to have a golden cross. Now, I want to point something out because I said I would do a little bit more short-term technical analysis if we have time, and this is going to transition into that. Golden crosses and death crosses typically signal Bitcoin bull markets and bear markets. The last time we saw a golden cross, a bull market started. But very big but. It's very important that we keep in mind Bitcoin's but. The last time we saw Bitcoin have a golden cross was indeed at the beginning of the Bitcoin bear market. But right before that, we saw one as well that was at the end of a Bitcoin rally. You don't want to just ignore that. The last time we saw one before that was at the end of a Bitcoin rally. If we see Bitcoin's accumulation phase move the exact same way that we did in the 2015 accumulation phase, what we'll see is one golden cross followed by a death cross followed by a golden cross, and this will be the start of the bull market. And from there, the bull market will start. Meaning that if we do what we did in 2015, this is not the beginning of a bull market, guys. And we're not starting one in the next couple of days. That is not what this golden cross that is coming in the next week is saying. In fact, if we look back in time here, the first golden cross that we saw in the accumulation phase happened literally on the very same day that the rally ended. So keep in mind, just because we're seeing a golden cross, I don't want you guys going and doing short-term technical analysis based on a golden cross on the daily chart. It is a massive mistake that I see so many people do. Very big mistake. You don't want to do that. If we look here at the chart, what we're seeing is that Bitcoin does have the potential to break bullish here. I've been talking about how I think Bitcoin is going to break bullish, and as the days go on, of course, that's going to change. It's going to move one way or the other depending on what Bitcoin does. Right now, Bitcoin has rejected off of this resistance and started moving to the downside, meaning that I'm a little bit more bearish. I was hoping Bitcoin would go ahead and break this, but in fact, we didn't. Let's see what happens on Bitcoin the next couple of days. I'm not here to make short-term predictions right now, but what I am here to say is that even if Bitcoin breaks bullish here, I'm expecting it's not going to move very far before it has a correction. Maybe up to $6,000 at most. I don't think Bitcoin is going to break $6,000 just yet. But no matter what happens, even if Bitcoin does this number or Bitcoin just breaks straight down here, I think Bitcoin is going to start some kind of correction in the next 2 weeks, maybe before that. And when it does that, it's going to just go ahead and happen to line up with that 50 simple moving average crossing the 200 moving average and this golden cross. Because like I said, oftentimes on the shorter term time frames, you'd be better off to counter trade these moving averages crossing in golden and death crosses, because typically that's actually, statistically, looking at the history of Bitcoin, the better way to do it. So if we see this cross happen here in the next couple of days, that might actually be a signal to sell your Bitcoin. And even though it's a golden cross, keep that in mind. I'm not saying that Bitcoin's about to crash in the next day or anything, but whether or not Bitcoin breaks bearish out of this ascending triangle pattern or breaks bullish then bearish, I think we're going to see another correction. We'll see what happens. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe the fundamentals and technicals are bullish enough that we don't need to see that. I do still believe that a Bitcoin bull market is coming in the next 6 months. This is what I was talking about earlier. I might be bullish on the very short term, bearish on the medium term, then bullish again on the longer term. It's perfectly okay to be bullish, bearish, and then bullish again on different time frames. That's not a problem. Don't let anyone tell you it is. If they do, then they're just wrong. But this is what I want to talk about in this video, guys. I wanted to explain to you exactly what golden crosses are, what death crosses are, their significance in the Bitcoin market, and what the one that we're about to see actually means for Bitcoin. The golden cross that we're about to see here in the next couple of days is basically inevitable, so it's going to happen no matter what Bitcoin does. These moving averages are going to cross. This does not mean that a bull market is starting in the next 2 or 3 days. This does not mean that we're about to go on a gigantic rally. This does not mean that we're about to be rich and then driving in 15 cars and making songs about horses and old country roads. That is not what this means, guys. What it means is that a bull market is coming. It does mean that a bull market is coming. It means that one is probably coming before the end of the year, more than likely in the next 6 months, as I've been talking about. That all being said, be very careful about the short term, because this is not a predictor of short-term price action. And even though it's a counter trade, it's a potential counter trade like I talked about, I'd be careful about counter trading just with the 50 and the 200 crossing. Use other technical analysis if you're going to start shorting or selling your Bitcoin positions in anticipation of a crash. You don't want to just trade based off of one indicator. That's always a very dangerous thing to do. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss in today's video. I wanted to lay out exactly what this golden cross means, because when I was doing YouTube back over here during the death cross, I didn't explain very well exactly what this meant for Bitcoin. So in this video, I wanted to reference and explain exactly what a golden cross and a death cross means, so that you guys have something to look into, so that you guys understand what these are, and you have some jumping off point to go and do some more research on your own. And speaking of doing more research on your own, guys, the sale for the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy is still ongoing. And in fact, there are going to be 5 new videos launching in the course starting tomorrow, Monday, the 22nd of April. That first video is going to be on market sentiment, but following that video is actually going to be a video on golden crosses and death crosses, where I go in depth about the nuances of them. In that video, I talk about everything that we discussed in today's video and quite a bit more. I talk about golden crosses and death crosses so that you guys understand what exactly they are. If you're not familiar with the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy, essentially what this is a course of currently 30, by the end of next week, 35 videos that I put together, which is currently 8.5 hours, and by then about 10 hours of content, teaching you about how to do cryptocurrency technical analysis. Here we take you all the way from the very beginner stage. If you've never even fired up TradingView, you've never even opened this software over here that we're looking at, you've never set up a Binance account or anything, we take you from your toddler baby steps, your first words, all the way up through doing advanced technical analysis, so that you have a good understanding of exactly what the markets are, what certain technical indicators mean, what market structure means, what all of these different components of technical analysis mean and do, so that you can then go ahead and do your own technical analysis, learn about how to work in markets, learn about how to trade and invest in them, and work in them properly. We have a video on trading and investing specifically. I'm very, very happy with this video. This was one of the videos that was actually suggested by one of my students. He said, well, Jeb, This was just after the course had launched. He said, well, Jeb, you know, I love all these videos that you have. He was actually giving a lot of praise, a lot of the people that go through the course do, about the course so far. But he said, you know, we have all of this theory about how to do technical analysis, but we want to know how to actually implement these into trades. And I said, you know what, that's a great idea. I don't know why I didn't have that video already. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this video on how to plan and execute profitable trades. I'm going to go ahead and click on. I'm not going to play the video, of course, because this is a product that I sell. I can't just show it to you. But in this video, I essentially set up three different trades where I show you exactly how to trade this market, how to set up stop losses, how to set up risk and reward factor, how to anticipate how much you're going to make in each one of these trades. Very good video. I lay out in 3 different charts, 3 different types of trades so that you understand how to go about setting up trades. Because a lot of people get into the space and they say, okay, well, I know a little bit about technical analysis. Now what? How do I implement that? That's what that video is for. We have a lot of great videos in here, guys. And like I said in yesterday's video, we've had hundreds of people go through the Technical Analysis Academy. We have a 14-day guaranteed, no questions asked refund policy. I will straight up give you your money by all you have to do is email me and say, yo, Jeb, I want my money back. All you gotta do is say, hey, Jeb, give me my money back. I'll give you your money back. We've had hundreds of people go through the course. Not one person has ever gotten a refund. That tells you something. I'm very proud of this course. And like I said, the hundreds of people that have gone through this course all love it. Very, very fair price in my opinion. So what I want you to do, click the link in the description down below. Even if you don't want to buy the course, click the link in the description down below. See what we have to offer. And if you do feel like you want to join the course, you do want to jump in and join us, use the coupon code EASTER2019. You'll get 20% off the course price, and you'll also be getting access to all current videos and all future videos. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching. Tell me in the comments down below what you think of this looming golden cross and the bull market that is soon to come. But like I said, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.